Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Luis Valente with us today. Luis is CEO and founder at iLoF. He's all about personalized medicine. He's a Forbes 30 under 30, sitting in Portugal, but also has a presence in the UK. An interesting guy that Luis that we have with us. We're gonna explore the future of personalized medicine with AI, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about on this podcast, and drug discovery, for example. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start, scale, or monetize your podcast, you can go to podpire.com. Luis, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, Charles. So I'm Luis. I serve as CEO of iLoF. And iLoF is we're UK-based company working on the personalized medicine space. We've been collecting massive amounts of multimodal data to help, pharmaceutical companies, biotechs, and overall leading research institutes cut time and cost of developing personalized therapeutics. So we care very deeply about the millions of patients that currently live without effective treatment for their illnesses. And we recognize that unfortunately, the same treatment does not work for each patient. So you need tools that can select the right patient to each clinical study. Then basically what we're doing is we brought together data scientists, physicists, and biologists to create an AI-powered platform that can select the right patient to each clinical study.
Interesting. So you started in electrical and computer engineering, then you went into business. How did you get into life science and drug discovery and AI?
Absolutely. So for a long, I used to say that for a very large period of my life, the only connection I had to healthcare was a deep passion and the fact that my wife is a medical doctor. That was pretty much it. But I think it became very clear to me that I wanted to do something very impactful with my life. So I've worked in other startup scale-ups before. They were trying to change the world, deep tech startups. Um, and I've also worked with like new ventures, like new technologies, like helping new technologies get to market. But it was only in 2019 when I started to get very passionate about the future of healthcare and about the fact that no matter where we are, no matter who we are, no matter what we do, the reality is that we all want to live longer, happier, healthier lives. And the big change that is coming in the way that we use and just feel healthcare is really born of the fact that we have a lot more personalization in the way that we buy our clothes than the way we get our healthcare. So when we want to buy a t-shirt, we know exactly what is our size. Then if we put in like a t-shirt that doesn't fit us, we don't say, oh, this t-shirt is broken. We just say, no, it works on someone else, but just not on me. It's not my size. But in healthcare, when you go to the doctor and you test out, or when you go to the doctor and it gives you a medication, um, it has no way or very little way of knowing if that medication is going to work with you or not. And then there's a lot of illnesses in which the trial and error approach is still the main one, where you try different medications until eventually you either give up or you find one that actually suits you. And so it became very clear to me. So me and my co-founders, we joined a Boston-based accelerator organized by a group in MIT. And in 12 weeks, we interviewed over 100 global stakeholders to validate a clear business need. And then coming out of that, we had 10 letters of intent, three of them from big pharma to start the business. So we ended up raising a pre-seed round from a German investor in 2019. And then brought in a couple of big tech investors, including Microsoft Ventures in 2020, and then the rest is history.
So who do you target precisely? Like who's your ICP and how do you get in touch with them?
Yeah. So we mostly look for, so at this problem, we're solving the problem of the industry. So we want to make sure that these medications get to the patients faster. And the problem of the industry that we're solving is mainly the problem of the organizations that are running these clinical trials or sponsoring these clinical trials. And this is mostly pharmaceutical companies and biotechs. So we reach out to these biotechs either through already established partnerships. So as I mentioned, so since day one, we've been executing on 3 letters of intent from 3 global pharmaceutical companies. And this is one of our let's say roots. And the other is just through outreach on technical conferences or just via the technical or the scientific, let's say, scope, where we reach out to these researchers in these large biotechs and large pharmas, and we show them how we can increase the probability of their treatments get to patients' hands faster. Yeah, and the third is just through cold outreach. I mean, LinkedIn or through our network.
Right. And the platform, so you do sample analysis, optical fingerprint generation, and fingerprint matching. So you actually receive samples at your lab.
Absolutely. So we currently have labs in the UK, Portugal, and in the US, upstate New York, actually. And we've been collecting thousands of different biological profiles extracted from this easily derived bodily fluids. We store them at -80, and yeah, and then we process them once, and we in a way digitalize these profiles. These are then fed to artificial intelligence pipelines that run on the cloud on Azure. And yeah, it's based on this that we train our artificial intelligence models that we then deploy within these studies.
And how are you different than algorithms such as DeepMinds? I believe DeepMinds does not do everything that you do, especially sample analysis, but they do have these algorithms, and there's in silico medicine as your competitors, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, so the beauty is that there's been an explosion on companies that are working either on the drug discovery or on the drug development space or both. So the big difference is that we've been collecting data that is often overlooked. So we collect optomics data, which is data collected from optical sources. The cost per data point of this data is orders of magnitude lower. And it also allows us to get an holistic view on ensemble of particles in patients' biological fluids, which allows us to not just or to not necessarily need to know in advance if we're looking at protein A or if we're finding a peptide C or vesicle D, if this is what's driving a certain signature in a patient's biological profile. But we can do this holistically. We can just say, okay, here is a group of patients that seems to react very well to this treatment, and here is the outcomes. And then we link the two and we match then patterns. And we can do this in a holistic way without knowing exactly from day one, without needing to know from day one what we're looking for in these patterns.
So, with your couple of partners, big partners that you have right now, you're providing them potential data source for drug discovery, and you've been doing that since the past 2 years, I guess. Have you got anything promising yet in the
Oh yeah.
pipeline?
Oh yeah, no, we just secured a 1.5 million clinical research contract to deploy our platform in over 30 clinical locations in the US, Canada, and the UK. And these we're doing in partnership with a very large organization in the US. So this is on the Alzheimer's field, which is one of the areas where personalized medicine is very much in need. So it's one of the biggest epidemics of our times. And yeah, we've been very laser focused selecting the right patients for this kind of clinical trials. We're also collaborating with quite a few institutions a little bit around the globe, academic and also smaller biotechs. Yeah, but so a lot of this works are done under NDA, so unfortunately we can't disclose them.
But it's pretty obvious why a company would choose to work with you, help them save on costs, right? And you also help them deploy faster, right? Which is essential
Absolutely.
in these studies. My first company was a nootropic, and back then we wanted to deploy a nootropic for Alzheimer. My grandmother personally died of Alzheimer. It seems you're also solving or attempting to solve and contribute to COVID, which is a nice niche, right? Like there's a bunch of people that have been affected by that, and there's long COVID nowadays, and also ovarian cancer. So tell me about like each of these three niches and why you chose them, these diseases.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, Alzheimer's is again one of the biggest epidemics of our times. It's very, very clear the big social need. and also the big impact that it creates in the world. So by 2020 or by 2050, Alzheimer's is going to be the biggest cost category of the NHS, of the UK's national healthcare system, and it's growing and growing. And just the impact, economic and socially wise, is just outstanding. So it was a big market opportunity. It was a big social responsibility. So it was a no-brainer to work on that. Then regarding oncology and infectious diseases, it was a mix between access to data. So again, I was taught as a computer scientist, and there's something that they used to tell me in university, which is AI models is garbage in, garbage out. So if the data that you input is not very good, then models are not going to be very good. So we choose our applications also based on the access to very well characterized and very large data sets. So that's one. And the second, of course, there's got to be a partner, a co-development partner, either a pharma or a biotech that can, in a way, allow us to test out the models. And then number three, there needs to be a very large business opportunity, either because there's a very big problem to be solved, or because, well, there's a very big player involved into these clinical studies.
Right. Well, Alzheimer's is just that so many people have tried to solve it with the amyloid plaque and so forth. No one has ever got to someone interesting. I believe this is changing because I have a Dr. Adrian Noriega, which is from my native Montreal. He's all about researching on that, and I believe there's been massive discovery. If you can tell me a bit more about that. The COVID one's obvious; it's fresh data as well. But also I want to hear you more about the ovarian cancer one, which is tough to detect.
No, absolutely. So first of all, on Alzheimer's, so Charles, very recently, there's been very encouraging news in the community. So there were a couple of treatments that were approved in the US. So unfortunately, none of them yet in Europe, but we're getting there. And again, the results weren't outstanding, but it was for the first time in 20, 30 years that we actually got a new treatment approved for Alzheimer's. And again, keep in mind that Alzheimer's there's still no disease modifying treatment for Alzheimer's. So to have one of these treatments approved is actually a very big thing. So again, we currently see a very promising pipeline of new treatments for Alzheimer's disease, and we're very confident that in the next 5 years, there will be in the market not just treatments that can slow down the progress of the disease, but I have a personal conviction that we are going to have treatments that are going to be reverting at least some of this degeneration. And this is really something very, very exciting. And some of the research I've been seeing is really solid and robust. So I'm really confident on that. So on ovarian cancer. So unfortunately, it's one of the biggest silent killers of women's in the world. So it's very hard to solve once it's already installed. It gives little to no symptoms. So that's why it's so hard to catch. And then on top of it, once you have it, the kind of therapeutical approach that you can take, it's going to vary greatly depending on the kind or the subtype of ovarian cancer that you have, and depending on your own biological profile. So what we're doing there is we're hoping to deliver a differential screening tool that can select the treatment that can have with the highest probability impact in that certain ovarian cancer phenotype and on that patient. So regarding COVID, again, so this was a vertical that we've published quite a few interesting papers, and we've also had the support of the European Commission to pilot the study and the model in a couple of hospitals. What we showed within the COVID space is that we can forecast 15 days in advance if a person is going to get, it's going to be a very serious case of COVID, or is just going to get mild or moderate symptoms. Of course, with the vaccines taking over, the impact of COVID was greatly reduced, and as it should. But we're using most of that research and most of those models to tackle other kinds of infectious diseases. And this is very upcoming work that I can't release right now, but very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. Do you feel your company is on the greatest path to solving these diseases? Because sometimes I'm like, we should create a a laboratory factory to scale science and accelerate experiments, like an in silico lab that you can control from a distance and you can open source to a bunch of researcher. What do you think about that method? And yeah, even having an AGI control it at some point. What do you feel is the fastest path to solving all these terrible diseases?
So first of all, I think it's, and again, I mean, you can say that it's because of my computer science background, but I truly believe that if you suddenly had all the data in the world, no boundaries, no protections, and you could use it for good, which is a big if, right? But if you could access all the data in the world that was collected, is being collected, or has been collected, I think a lot of the currently still untackled diseases would be immediately or almost immediately solved, just because of the sheer amount of data that is collected. So I really strongly believe that in the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing more and more innovation in healthcare, because there's more and more ways to share data anonymized or in a federated learning way, where you can train models while still assuring full privacy of the patients that donated this data. So I really strongly believe that, especially these AI models, and again, maybe AGI, but maybe even before AGI, are going to be able to really phenotype these patients and to allow you to have a much more personalized approach to your health. Because, well, Charles, you know what you like, right? So when you go out and you buy food, you don't just randomly try all the food in the menu, because the probability of hitting something that you really want to eat would be very low, right? So you know exactly what you want, you go for it and you eat it, right? But again, that's not the approach we have in healthcare. The approach we have in healthcare is, okay, let me try the pasta. Okay, I don't like pasta. Let me try the rice. And the reality is that this approach is, in my honest conviction, already in this way down. So we're going to have more and more data-driven decisions by physicians in the hospitals, and that's going to allow you to get in control of your own health, regardless of AGI coming very soon or not, which I believe we will. That's a separate topic.
And would we need an actual remote lab, or could we invent all that data in an artificial environment, sort of like DeepMind is hypothesizing, and we could create limitless experiments in that cloud environment?
Oh, in silico experiments are great. And let's say that a lot of the value of our approach, that in a way we're digitalizing biological profiles. So we are shining very focused lasers into these biological profiles. We're understanding the chemical composition and the profiles that this biological profiles in a way reproduce. And then we can in the future run an infinite number of experiments with samples that have already been collected, even if it was 50 years ago, as long as we can digitalize them and then use the signals in a digitalized format. So this is very much the inception of the iLoF vision. So of course, I agree 100% that running these in silico clinical trials and running these in silico tests, it's going to be the future. And then the ideal scenario would be a scenario where you take blood once every month, and that's it. And then your entire healthcare is then personalized based on that, and then you don't need to take it throughout the time, because everything runs in the cloud, and then every little decision that is done is compared and is basically using this digital twin of Charles. It's real life.
Right, but wouldn't my blood composition change, and wouldn't like real time be of added value up until like some point where the AI or the AGI can reproduce the potential changes in my blood?
Absolutely. So that's exactly what I'm saying. That so in a world where you can reproduce, um, so let's say when you can, you have infinite computing power and you can reproduce exactly a human in digital version. So if you were to do that, then you could take blood, let's say once a year, and then just to fine tune the model. And then in between, the model would predict how Charles is doing in a certain day. But the reality is that I think we're still very far away from
Yeah.
that. So then there's two approaches. One approach is, of course, as you were saying, continuous blood monitoring. So there you have something in your body that is continuously, hopefully non-invasive, And there's a couple of cool companies working on that. So you have a couple of implants that are continuously collecting information on your blood, sending it to the cloud. And then you have real-time data. The other is the one that I was saying, and the one that we're more bullish on the short term, which is you do it, let's say, once a month. And then in the meantime, you just more or less try to forecast what is happening to your body.
Got it. Super interesting. As a CEO, how do you split your time nowadays? Is it 25% fundraising, 50% product, 25% sales? How do you split it?
So that's an excellent question. I spend actually a lot of time with team. So dealing with team, making sure team is motivated, recruiting. I would say at this point, I'm probably spending most of my time recruiting. So again, we're under 30 people. So let's say team is still pretty much one of my biggest concerns. Yeah, of course. I mean, even though we're luckily relatively well funded, the reality is that yes, you do end up spending a lot of time in financing tasks. I would say potentially 25% to 30% of my time. And this includes all the way from, of course, investor relationships, new investor relationships, strategic partnerships, so on and so forth. And then the remaining is scattered around private partnerships, business development, strategy. Yeah, and just making sure that we're on to making iLoF a very big success and on to solving a very big problem in the world.
You launched almost during COVID. Was COVID good or mayhem for you?
No, it was good. Actually, it was a very good moment for us. It was. I understand it was a bad moment for a lot of people, but it was actually a very good moment for us. And yeah, again, not just because everyone suddenly became obsessed with their healthcare, but because we were able to demonstrate value on well, the COVID-19 infection, which was a very big moment for iLoF.
Right. Yeah. Then everything's online and you're using AI. So I guess that was a leverage for you. Do you still depend on grants, research grants, for example, or it's mostly VC funding?
Yeah, so we were always mostly VC funded. Of course, we have R&D grants and non-dilutive funding, but yeah, but we've been VC funding from day one.
Cool. And you also split your time in between speaking gigs, and you're also in various startup organizations. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, so I believe very much on the power of giving back, and I believe very strongly on the power of helping the next generation of entrepreneurs. So we were helped a ton, like ever since day one, ever since my first startup many years ago. So if I can do anything to give back, I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm a mentor of a couple of organizations, and I'm really excited about this next generation of upcoming entrepreneurs.
How do you your day? How do you optimize your time? At what time do you get up? And then what does a day in the life of Louis looks like?
So a normal day would be so morning would be mostly spent with team. Then it would be full of calls until like 7 p.m. with a short break for dinner, and then yeah, then hopefully clearing some backlog of emails before going to bed. And not a very exciting day, unfortunately, Charles.
Any self-care breaks, meditation, sports, walks?
Um, I used to do dancing. I used to dance. So my partner, she's a big dancer, so I used to dance. Unfortunately, I no longer do that. I like to walk. I like to walk. I like to listen to music mostly while I work. Yeah, I think it's all more about family. If family is supportive and if you're doing things that matter, yeah, of course, sleeping is important, I guess. But yes, I think I'm a strong believer that if you do what you love, and it will be harder for you to burn out. Not impossible, but it will be harder for you to burn out.
I fully agree with that. A lot of people don't understand that. I still love the dancing part, though. Dance is great for stress relief. All the movement and the energy that gets stuck in the body. So, yeah, my wife's a Mexican woman, so it's in her blood. So every now and then get to dance and release the stress there. Luis, thank you for showing up today. Where can people find out more about you?
Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or just reach out by email. So my email is on LinkedIn and on our website, iLoF.tech. Yeah, very looking forward to connecting with like-minded entrepreneurs or anyone interested on contributing to the future of personalized medicine.
Thank you, Luis. That was Luis Valente.